right, so with that great start, we can move on to our first keynoter, the incomparable, everyone, Kareem Weaver. So Kareem brings a perspective that's really important for every administrator, teacher, and policymaker in California. He's got that view from the ground that's really informed by this dire necessity of systemic change. He spent years in the classroom, in school administration, and on the front lines of reform in Oakland, which has given him this unmatched insight into what truly works and what doesn't, for that matter, when it comes to teaching every single child to read. He's, of course, the co founder of FULCRUM, an organization dedicated to ensuring every school uses the most effective evidence aligned literacy instruction available. And his fierce, practical advocacy is driving much of the current discussion around the science of reading across California, really pushing us toward that equitable and effective literacy policy. And so, with that, I'm super pleased to introduce you to my friend and colleague in this work, Kareem Weaver. Hi, Kareem.
Hey Leslie, how you doing? Love having a friend like you introduce me. Good to see you, friend. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here. I'll try my best to offer you something tangible that you can use. Just a bit of context. About 7 or 8 minutes ago, I was listening to Governor Newsom give his introduction. I really wanted to hear it, and I got a phone call. This tutoring company called me. We had a movie screening. We had a new movie out called Left Behind, and we had a screening the other night. And at that screening, there was a young man who's 21 years old, and apparently he doesn't know how to read. And his aunt, I'm assuming, is the custodian. So she came up to me afterwards. One of my staff members at Fulcrum pointed her to me, and she told me, she's like, I don't know what to do. I came here tonight because he can't read. I don't know what to do. He's 21. He turns 22 in November, and we need help. And I don't know what to do. And I told them, hey, you know what? We're gonna see what we can do. We'll try to figure something out. And. And so I called a touring company. I said, call me back anytime. Call me back. I got a young man who needs help, and this is a company I've worked with before. And they called me while the governor was speaking. And the young man needs help, and I'm on with the California Reading League in 5 minutes, and it's going to take probably 15 minutes on this call. What would you do? What do you do? Um, I thought about it for a nanosecond, and I said, like my co-founder at Fulcrum said, Liza told me one time, she said, Cream, we're either going to save these kids or we're not. So I hopped off the Zoom call. I know I probably freaked out the California Reading Coalition people and took the call. I took the call and we scheduled another time to connect, and we're gonna help that young man, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. So I just share that with you because there will always be things that come up. There's always good, but we have to be clear on our priorities, even when we're in the professional spaces and all the rest. It's got to be kids first, or it's just all a kind of a performative exercise. So anyway, with that framing, I'm glad to be here today, and let's jump right into it. I just want to give you a second to do that, and I'll do a quick sound check. Leslie, you can hear me, correct?
Yep, yep,
Great, fantastic.
looks great.
All
We
right.
can't see you anymore
So
for whatever reason, in your Zoom box. I don't, we can see your background, but you're
as
not in
long
it.
as you see the slides, we're good.
Okay. I don't know what happened to
Well,
you.
look, it's our time.
Typical.
It's California's time. I've been around the country, and I have engaged with Lord knows how many states and districts around the country, and everyone's got their thing. Massachusetts just passed some legislation recently. Forget them for a second, and others passed them. But forget the rest of them. It's our time in California. It's
Mm.
time for us to move the needle. I love the title of this conference or this summit because it's policy is the first step, but we have to get beyond that, and the next step then is implementation. So I want to make sure to offer some groups, some tangible things that we can do. All right, I've learned not to overload these presentations with 50 million things, but each group will get a couple of things that are tangible they can walk away with and implement right away, or at least inquire and figure out what needs to happen. Okay, so here are the 5 quick things I'm going to go through in the time I have, and away we go. First, let's start with the timeline of California. So if you've been around a little bit like me, got a few gray hairs, you know that there's been a lot of work on the legislative front, California over the year. Policies have changed, frameworks have changed. I can remember, I'm old enough to remember when the whole language craze kind of kicked in, and we made some changes to our state framework, and it emphasized that, and it started the whole kerfluffle. I won't go too much in that, but that was around in the 80s, and then the 90s was hip deep in the classroom, and there were some changes that happened again. The framework and all the rest. I won't bore you with too much of this history, but this is kind of the ebb and flow of things, right? Then we had the reading first era that showed some results, and then the standards were adopted in 2012, and then the ELA ELD framework, which is huge. We're kind of unique in that sense. And it just kept going. There's been a um, slow growth, or slow changes have happened. It's taken a lot of work for a lot of people. And listen, some of these things I'm in alignment with, some of these things I may not be in alignment with. But the bottom line is there has been some huge policy shifts and decisions made at the state level over the last 40 years or so. Then the ELA, or the ELSB block grant, or that LT case, which really identified the 75 lowest schools, K3, and gave them 50 million bucks. Um, there were some young people who and their parents who sued the state, and the state decided, hey, we're going to pay out, and we're going to make sure that these districts have the resources they need to improve. And those block grants were in place, and $50 million is no small amount. And then, thank goodness for Senator Portantino, who stood tall and said, we're going to have this dyslexia screen. It's implemented this year. I'm sure everyone, understood that actually happened this year. It's because of the work of Portantino and his team, and then all the legislators who came together to make that happen on behalf of California's K through 2 students. So you have that. Then you have recently, and a couple things that happened that I just want to touch on. So SB 488 really started to shift teacher prep. That's what transitioned RICA out. Many of us came in we took the RICA test or whatever. And Senator Susan Rubio, state senator, Susan Rubio, authored legislation that changed things towards evidence-based reading, the teacher prep world. And then RICA sunsetted. This is a big shift in California. And I'll just read this down low. So by Senator Rubio, strengthens reading instruction, ensures teacher candidates a qualified, prepared to teach students based on best practices. Just huge. Then 1454, Assemblywoman Blanca Rubio. This is the legislation that was just mentioned by Governor Newsom and discussed in the professional development that's on the table, et cetera. And that was authored by, or co-authored, I should say, by Assemblywoman Blanca Rubio. Now, there are others who were, and they were named. Most of them were named, and so I won't go through it again, but they really worked hard. But Assemblywoman woman Blanca Rubio was very much involved in the beginning and the authoring and creating of that legislation. And it directly addresses some of these disparities that we see. And it works to ensure classroom materials are aligned with decades of cognitive research on how children learn to read. So that's the legislative statement. And I call these ladies California's first ladies of literacy. They're sisters. Can you imagine how proud their parents are? They are a dynamic duo in the California legislature, and they are the ones who really put forth these bills. And I won't tell their story. It's an amazing story. I've heard Assemblywoman Rubio share it a few times, of her family and her brother, and why they do what they do, and the importance of evidence-based instruction. And she wishes that people in her family all had access to this. She laments that because she knows what a difference it made, and how those who didn't get it, they struggled with some of those outcomes that we don't want for our kids. And so they took their reality and embedded in their principles and took them to work. And California's children are now reaping the benefits of their experience and their hard work. So hats off to California's first ladies of literacy. Okay, and with that, good old Margaret Mead, sometimes we can feel overwhelmed because the road seems to be so heavy. What can I do as one individual person? Well, if there's anything we can learn from the Rubio sisters, it only takes with a couple of people. to really change things. Matter of fact, that's really the only thing that does. I agree with Margaret Mead. There is no organization coming to save us. It's individuals saying, "Hey, we can do this," and putting their hand to the plow and actually getting something done. So hats off to those ladies and for those people around them that supported the work to get all kids what they need so they can learn how to read. Okay, you may have noticed that when I had that up, there was some light purple writing similar to what's on the bottom where it says Senator Susan Rubio. You may have noticed that. So that is a copyright. I got permission from the person who created it, um, and her name is Sarah. And Sarah said, "Yeah, Kareem, you can go ahead and use it." It's called Noah Text, and what it does is it really makes explicit certain aspects of the code. We always say, "Well, what about secondary teachers? What do we do for high school and middle school kids?" This is really geared towards them because it helps struggling readers, kids with dyslexia, multilingual learners. They have studies out that show that, hey, if you give kids training wheels for the language, they will learn the code. Um, and it is phenomenal. They've got some um, web browser extensions. I think that's what it's called. Web browser. You tech folks probably know better than I, but I think it's Firefox and Chrome or whatever. And you just you once you add the extension, then you can put in the text or the web pages pop up with these kind of diacritical marks, but it's different. It's not normally what you see when you open a dictionary. It breaks apart the syllables and it tells you what's the long vowel and etc. And it's a game changer for kids. So for you who are in secondary, this is one of those things that sometimes you can show people better than you can tell them. And I figured, you know what? Why not just have them see it? All right. So for you secondary teachers, I'd leverage Noah Text as a tool across content areas, especially if you're using internet resources. There are some books, I believe they publish some books and whatnot, but definitely the web extensions and the web browsers. Leveraging that tool consistently really gives kids access, and the feedback from children is just phenomenal. And the learning has improved, the reading has improved, and so there's that. So that's one for secondary folks. I told you about two things for each group. So one for the secondary teachers, leverage Noah Text, get the download for the extensions and go for it. Now, does it work for elementary school kids? I would imagine so as an elementary school teacher, but the research, I believe, was for grades 5 through 12. So take it for what it's worth. Um, there's evidence to show from 5 through 12 and K through 4. That's just your teacher instincts right there. But also, the other thing for secondary folks, and I say secondary, I'm including middle school, is you know, when we have our goals and our objectives, et cetera, we oftentimes think of ourselves as simple content experts, right? And it's true. If I'm a math teacher, a geometry teacher, what have you, that's my area of expertise, and I have and there are standards, et cetera. But given the framework, the ELA ELD framework, and given the legislation that's passed and the professional development that's available to all California teachers, it behooves us to really dig in as a team and as a unit. And to get this, that means everyone's a reading teacher, everyone. So if I'm a secondary teacher, besides the Noah text, I'm also saying, okay, individually, every week, I will have a language goal. In addition to my biology or my chemistry or whatever it is, I have a language goal, be it a suffix, a prefix, be it a root word that's in Latin or Greek, whatever the case may be, but it's a language goal. And if you multiply that by 5 other classes every week, 4 years of high school, you can imagine how the language can begin to build. The language skills and understanding can begin to build. That's one thing. On top of that, as a collective group, as a school, to have a school-wide goal. Now, this is something that administrators work out with site leadership. Maybe it's your leadership team, the coaches, et cetera. What is our goal for this week for language? This week, we're doing the prefix er or I'm sorry, the suffix er or the prefix a, right? We're going to break this down. And then across classrooms, we can discuss it, we can implement it, and kids can make linguistic connections. It is huge. So my background, in addition to doing English only, well, Shepard English immersion, but I also was a bilingual teacher for many, many years. and mainly fourth and fifth grade combo for bilingual. And I did this, at least the individual part. And it was so effective. I often say it's like jet fuel for learning. It compounds. It's like compound interest. It is unbelievable in terms of what it does for kids. Now, multiply that across a school. In fact, it was so effective, they thought I was doing something shady. I was like, no, I'm actually just having language objectives and going in a direct, systematic, explicit way. Um, if a whole school can do that, that's when you begin to see things really mushroom. Okay. Hey, five folks. So I want to take a step back for a second. You heard the information about the professional learning that's in the bill and what's going to be available to teachers. So I just want to go through five things quickly that for teachers, things that we have to have or that you would want to leverage. One, you already heard about accessing the professional learning. Leslie mentioned what's in the bill. You'll have to seek out those resources from your network, but that's one thing that you have access to that wasn't there before. $200 million is no small change. Thank you, Governor Newsom and the legislature. Supporting others. So those of us who are veteran educators, sometimes it behooves us to make sure that we're supporting those who may not be as experienced. Third thing is accessing instructional leadership. You have a right as educators to have instructional leadership. That means in addition to someone being a manager, they must also provide you with instructional leadership. That includes coaching and development and support. It's not just a matter of managing. So for teachers, it's important to make sure that we're leveraging those things, that we insist upon it to the people who make those decisions or who are supposed to be growing either alongside of us or ahead of us. And the fifth in this bucket, then I'll get to the right-hand side of that chart, is planning time. So this is one thing, if you ever heard me speak before, this is something that is huge. We are not going to, laws don't teach kids. Blueprints, frameworks, roadmaps, strategic plans, they don't teach kids. Diligence and planning teach kids. It's our instruction. And to the extent that we're planned for extensions as well as safety nets on a consistent basis, we'll have access, our children will have access to what they need to grow. So that means, and like I said, I've worked I've worked with folks across the country, and there are some who elevate this, but very few, either in a union or non-union setting. If it's in the South, a lot of times they don't have unions. And then most time on the West Coast and other places we do. But this is something that can be elevated within the labor association, as well as the district and school leadership and the community and the adoption committee. We have to make sure that planning time is adequate to the task. That means that we're able to plan for objectives. It takes time across content areas, as well as our bread and butter planning that has to take place just to make sure that we have the preparation that we need. So I just wanted to point that out because oftentimes this is a missing part of the conversation. Teachers are not magicians, and I'm coming to you to say, listen, I've spoken to just about everyone I can, but I need to appeal to the teachers that you have got to elevate this within your context so that it's on people's radar. We want you to negotiate this. We want you to make this, board members, community members, parents, whomever. This is a priority for us because we want to be prepared. We want to have the time to do it and not just do it at home. Kudos to those who can do everything at home. God bless you. But this is an institution that should be able to be self-sustaining. And so that means embedding in it the planning time that we need to make sure we're able to reach all kids. Okay, so now let me come over to the other side. So you see the daily, weekly, biweekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly things that need to be emphasized. So I would ask you, when you see this, what are a couple of things there? Just a couple of things, and you could put them in the chat. What are a couple of things there? If you had to pick two, what would be the most important things to do on that chart? Would you mind just putting them in there? Making sure your instruction is code-based on a daily basis, making sure that you're building knowledge or fluency or direct instruction, using direct instruction or writing or the coaching cycle. What are the two things that you think across that you would say are the most important in terms of practice? Would you mind putting that in the chat? Okay. Thank you. And I see some people actually adding why they feel that's important. That's great. I will just say there are no wrong answers here. Okay. Obviously, there's no wrong answers. However, However, I want to elevate a couple that have shown to be um, most important. From you cheated. You went to the cadence section. I know, but it's the most because when we talk about structured literacy, we often talk about all the five pillars plus oral language and writing. But what we don't talk about oftentimes is that systematic piece. It's one thing to have things explicit and direct. That's wonderful, but it's got to be consistent. And so the daily aspect of it. Now I know some people have structured things that they may have a 4 day, instructional cycle, and then there's a fifth day for fine. But there's got to be some consistency in how we teach kids to access the code, the oral language development, or the language development, oral and written, the direct instruction, all these things. The consistency matters because if we do it on Monday, but not again until Friday, it doesn't take not as well, not nearly as well. And based on what I've seen from around the country, those who are actually moving the needle, which is the title of this summit today, they're doing things daily. So my challenge is for the educators, well, for the teachers specifically in this group, um, those things that we leverage, those things that we apply, our coaching cycles, our language across content areas, how we're using direct instruction, using writing, just all these different things that daily is the most important part. The second thing is the language goals across content areas. Now, I know that I mentioned that for secondary, but I got news for everybody that that's also the same modus operandi for K5 or pre K5. That when we're doing um, math, it's also language development. When we're doing science, so if I'm talking about a vertex in geometry in fifth grade, vert is truth and it's upright. It's also veritable and vary and veritas, and we come to Latin, and we're building language, we're developing language, and kids love that stuff. I know sometimes as adults we think that is so boring. Who cares about Latin and Greek? Let me tell you something. Kids love that stuff, especially second language learners, because it helps them to put the pieces of the code together. Leslie, it's probably good that you don't see me on camera because I'm like a wild man over here right now. So, language goals across content areas and applying things on a daily basis. So, for teachers, like, this isn't some razzmatazz sizzle thing. Let me tell you something. This is the coin of the realm. If you want to move from policy to implementation, the consistency of doing things daily, adding language goals. Now, many people think that language development and language goals are only for second language learners. Nothing could be further from the truth. Multilingual learners, yes, they need language development. Yes, absolutely. And our framework says that, and that is true. So I taught a bilingual class for over a decade, and I loved every second of it. And frankly, I wasn't sure if I would. I didn't know for sure. I was used to teaching Black kids. I didn't know. Come to find out, they need a lot of the same stuff. There are some differences, like they've got to go deeper in the language, and sure, yes. And language development is good for all children. All children. Okay, let me leave that alone. We can do the whole thing on this. This is very, very important. Okay. Coaching. So we had the opportunity to coach, to meet with leaders from the Mississippi Department of Education. And you may have heard their story. They went from 50th in the country for fourth grade reading down to I think it's seventh now. Seventh or eighth or sixth, something like that. They're in the top 10. And people wonder, what are they doing? Are they cheating? Are they just holding kids back? What are they doing? So we built a relationship with them. And they're first of all, they're great folks. Great folks. We love them to death. And they've been very, very generous with their time. And so they shared some of their practices with us. They came out to the Bay Area of California. They talked with our superintendents and school board members and coaches and et cetera, and we've gone out there to do things for them, and we've had a chance to visit their schools and networks. But they sat down for podcasts with us, and we had a chance to talk with them and ask them, what did you do? So when we talk about coaching, Mississippi actually has coaches that are under the auspices of the State Department. They come from the State Department and they're going to schools. They're not evaluators. They're not part of your evaluation cycle at all. It's purely for growth. And so I want to let me see. I'm going to try to play this now. I'm going to try to play this. Just a quick clip of one of their coaches sharing how they approach the work.
don't think we can hear it.
Can you all hear that?
No, did you enable content when you did screen share?
You know what? I may not have, but we're gonna keep it moving.
Okay.
I'm not gonna stop. So basically, what she said was the highest leverage things that they could do. You're talking about um, co-teaching, modeling, providing timely feedback, and interfacing with leadership at the site level and at the district level. Like those are some high leverage practices that coaches can do. And by the way, you have the QR code. You can get this and hear the video all you want. It's probably for the best because my time is a little short. But she just said, "Listen, I'm embedded. I'm right there with them. And there are some things that are high leverage. There are some things that are not high leverage. In fact, they explained it to us in a way. They said, well, you can have, let me go one more here. You can have heavy coaching and light coaching. And they said we had to move from light coaching, which a lot of people have coaching, and they say, "Oh, this is wonderful. We have coaches." Actually, it's kind of light, especially given the needs of students and teachers and principals and families. Sometimes we have coaching, but it's almost in name only. It is with the best of intentions, but it's just too light. And so they gave us this way to look at it. Now there are more things here. I just want to give you a few, but there are more things they gave, probably twice as many. But when you get this, you can click on it and you can see the full thing. But does it result in immediate transfer? That's a little bit when you facilitate. If it doesn't, it's too light. Everyone here probably knows if you've been in a coaching or a PD session, you went, oh my God, this is not going to show up in my school, in my classroom tomorrow. I've got papers to grade. So just the same with PD, it's the same with coaching. It has to be transferable immediately. If not, it's just too light. Um, do the coaches perform duties in the classroom that should be performed by someone else, whether it's an aide or anyone? There's the menial tasks, the things that we do as educators that we have to do, but those aren't the highest leverage. So what they would describe it as just a little too light. And so one of the things I want to offer the coaches today is to really review and examine how heavy is your coaching? How regular is it? Are you conducting lesson studies with teams of teachers, trying to refine the structure? Are we regularly meeting with principals or assistant principals to discuss instruction, not in an evaluative way? I'm just talking about growing people's practice. So since California has made this investment for professional learning, it has to coincide with on the ground support. A virtual classroom is not going to do it alone. There has to be some human interaction where we can build our practice in reasonably safe spaces, so that we can improve our practice on behalf of children. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, there are some things that I understand. Can you please go make these copies for me? I get it. I understand it. And as the coach, there's a line that we have to hold around, highest leverage activities on behalf of children. And if we're doing things that are not highest leverage, unless your district has unlimited resources and you just have coaches all over the place and they can do all these other tasks, if that's your reality, good on you. But most coaches and most school systems are really struggling to meet the need. And with these new resources coming from the state, we're going to have to double down on making sure that we're doing the highest leverage activities and doing them consistently. Okay. So with that, and by the way, that framework is from Joel and Killian taking the lead. You can click on it later when you have time and go through that resource. Um, but there are some things that I wanted to just name really quickly before we move off the coaches. So there are a lot of things that we can leverage as coaches to support folks. And there are different levels of emphasis depending on personality, background, training, etc. Even within Fulcrum, my colleague Devika Sood is a phenomenal coach, and she's worked with people. And we're very different. We're very different. I'm a more let's put it this way. She is a very she likes to build relationship, and she takes her time, and she works with people, and she wants to build trust and all these things before she goes in and does anything that would be considered to be I don't know. It's just that's just she has a lighter touch, more depth, more nuanced, refined way. Whereas me, I'm respectful, and I'm also more of a let's get it done type person. That's just my personality. It's my background. It's my training, and it has worked for me and for the teachers that I have served. Now, I'm not saying one way is better than the other. I mean, I have my bias, obviously, but what I am saying is we should be aware of that and make sure that it's matched with the people that we're coaching. So it's not that Director Sue, Devika's style is better than mine, but maybe it's better for those teachers than mine. That maybe my style, while some might prefer that, frankly, um, especially those who are a little bit more seasoned, like myself, those who a little thicker skin, like, hey, let's go, just tell me what to do and let's get it. But not that doesn't work with everybody. So it's not that either of us necessarily are completely right or completely wrong. It's that I want to remind the coaches that we have to match our approach to the people that we're coaching, and that takes a little bit of humility. That takes some grounding because, frankly, if something works for us, it's our frame of reference. But we have to put that aside to make sure we're doing what the teachers need and what the folks who we're coaching what they need. If we're coaching the principals, same thing. So anyway, so that's a reminder, and that goes across all these different things, right? Leadership skills, the content experience, but those relationship skills, there's the nuance there of making sure that we're aligned um, with our audience. Okay, let's keep going. And then there's the actual coaching model that Mississippi has. I'm elevating Mississippi because when David gave me this resource, I was like, you know what, I might as well give them a best in class model. There are other models out there, but their model is simple, it's clean, it's a one pager. And I figured, you know what, let's give it to them so that they can do their thing. And you can take it or let it alone. But I figure it's worth sharing because of the results that they've gotten. And it is important for us to start making evidence based decisions. Okay. System leads. We're moving down the line. System leads. So here are, as a result of our work around the country, here are the 8 things that we identified as being highest leverage from a system lead perspective. I mean, we talk about the secondary teachers and using the NOAA text and having, language objectives on either a daily or a weekly basis, and the K-5 folks and having, making sure that things are done consistently on a daily basis, and we're embedding like all that's great. From a systems perspective, there are some things that need tending to. We already did number 6. Woohoo! We just had our screening this year. Thank you, Senator Portantino. But oftentimes we forget about things like number 2. And in most school districts, and I will try my best to play a video after this. This came from FULCRUM, but also my friends of Reading Horizons. We empower someone within the cabinet to handle reading, but not necessarily that being their only job. So, for example, we might have a chief academic officer, but that chief academic officer may have 4 or 5 different things that they're leading. And I would say that if you're leading 4 things, you're not really leading any one thing, right? There's someone has to be focusing on this, and they have to be a chief of that thing, whether that's the title or not. But someone who's in charge of the doing. Um, it has to be within earshot of the head. So if the superintendent or the chief academic officer is in cabinet, then someone is going to be right there banging the table saying, hey, what about literacy? Here are our highest needs. These are the things that I need recommended or that we need based on the recommendations of staff, et cetera. Right. So that's one. I'll get into that in a little bit more in a second. And then adopting high quality curriculum, aligning it with prep time. I Listen, we could talk all day on those 2 things, but I'm going to move on. But you see the list there. You can come back to it later as need be. Again, we review this with our partners like Reading Horizons, as others, NAACP and others. But this is something that we found to be extremely helpful for system leads as they're framing how they're going to approach the work. Okay, now this one I want to make sure that I play. So I'm going to stop it and I'm going to try it again, all right, to make sure that we're getting it because y'all got to hear this. This is an example of some colleagues who, while they work well together and they do wonderful things, they basically said, "Hey, there's some things we've got to have." They said there's some things we've got to have. So I'm gonna try playing this for you. Give me 1 second.
Yes, I know.
Whose baby is this? Who's the parents? You got the superintendent who's got her relationship with dyslexia. You've got the board chair. You've got the two of you. You've got the teacher. Is there anyone who is considered to be the person or the entity or the entities that like this is theirs? Does anyone own this? Do you have a
It's
person whose is it?
It's Sarah's right here.
It's Sarah's.
And that's why I
Okay.
brought her, honestly. Like when
Okay.
we had an opening and she interviewed, she wowed the committee and like she came with a mindset of like we can do better. And that's what, and that's why I wanted to continue our working together because I knew she knows what she's doing and really owns this work and is such an expert, but not in a threatening way. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
I
working
do.
with
So let me
Mhm.
ask you this, Sarah. So how far are you from the superintendent? How many layers of administration are between you and and the soup?
It's
One.
Dr. Two.
Yeah, it's one.
She came
Dr.
by
Two.
Sarah's office earlier to see the therapy dog.
So it's you,
Yeah.
Dr. Two, and then
Yep.
the soup. So
Yep.
you've got somebody. So okay. So there's a cabinet meeting. Soup is bringing in the cabinet. Is there someone in that meeting who understands and owns the thrust of this? Is that you, Dr. Two?
That's me.
That's
Hmm.
you. Okay, so you got somebody cabinet level who owns and understands this.
Yeah.
Does that matter? Does that make a difference to have somebody at that level of the organization? Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because this is important because cabinets all around the country, your superintendents are trying to figure out how to structure things, and boards are trying to figure out, okay, so what should we approve, and what are the roles, and how should like why does that matter if it does?
It matters because I really think, and like working with Sarah and our previous student services director and our current student, there can't be this divide between special education and general education anymore, right? There, it just can't. We have to teach kids, and these are programs or services that kids access. And so I think having someone at the cabinet level who really believes in tiered supports, what happens in tier one, like Sarah said, the same lingo, the same language is also happening in our tier two pull out academic support. That's also happening in our tier three one-on-one OG sessions, also happening in special ed, right? So we're all in a aligned system with the same language, the same goals, I think is really important to have at the cabinet level because that person ultimately, like I oversee K-12 programming. And so
Right.
we need to make sure that there is a bridge and consistency throughout all of our services. We're training our ESL teachers as well in
All right. So you all see that. And that's a conversation that systems need to have within themselves to make sure they're organized in a way that best serves children. Okay. Let me go back to it. I have just a few more things here before we tap off. I got to hustle. Now, I only have 3 or 4 more, so we can do this, you all. Look, so let's talk curriculum adoption for a second. The state is actually going through a process of adopting curriculum. I think that's wonderful, and it's long overdue. It's needed. We got some stuff. There's going to be a process and all the rest. And having said that, there are some things that have to be considered. That rarely are. One is teacher experience level. Well, hold on. Let me come back. Um, First of all, when we're looking at curriculum, the number one thing that we need to look at is does it work? You don't need a research. Well, does it work? Are there randomly controlled trials? There's got to be something, and ideally, it's third party, not from the publisher. There's an independent person saying if this stuff works. Not like that's just common sense, right? We want the stuff to work. And then the second thing is, who does it work for? It's the kids and the teachers. Does it work for teachers at a variety of experience levels? I'm going to show you very quickly something that um, that we found in one study that is it's a very popular curriculum. I won't name the curriculum, but they said in their own study that it didn't have student achievement results for students of novice teachers. That's 1 to 2 years after 1 or 2 years of implementation. They define novice as being, you've had a couple of years under your belt already. There are districts around the state who have many, many novice teachers, and oftentimes they're serving in the most vulnerable classrooms. So those are the type of things you have to tease out to see if it's a good fit for your system. Okay. Next, planning time. And like I said before, those of you who know me, this is a drum I will continue to bang because when you're looking for curriculum that fits your system, this has to be on the table. Now, I'm not saying that there's one, structure that's the best, but if you see this chart here, and I'll just run it from here, that we're just all over the place. And this is a little old. So Oakland, for example, now has 50 more minutes of collaboration time, and we categorize in different ways, but different materials align with different structures. So if you have 300 minutes a week like Chicago, you fundamentally are looking at different things than the folks in West Contra Costa who only have 100 minutes a week. Does that make sense? Like, regardless of what you're going to pick, you've got to consider, does it work and do you have time to do it? And I implore you, I beseech you, on behalf of our children and our teachers, we have got to make that a priority for every system if the goal truly is full implementation. If we want to leverage this wonderful training that the state is now providing us, well, we have to have time to actually implement the stuff that we're learning about using the materials that we're being provided with. Okay. Somebody just had to say that. And then the last thing is the pressure test. So something can work and have evidence that it works with children and with newer teachers and all the rest, but you've got to pressure test it. That means, does it work in the environment that we have? So I'll use Oakland for an example. Oakland, there are some schools in Oakland that are under immense pressure, whether there's some issues, attendance issues, the community's got some challenges, whatever. So not only does it have to work, but it has to be pressure tested to work in those environments. And when your committee sits down to discuss or decide what's going to be used and what teachers are going to have, understand that more than likely, those are the folks who have figured things out. So they have bandwidth in their day to join a committee. Well, are those folks that are dealing with the most intense environments? Usually not. So you have to make sure when those decisions are being made that you include folks in there who can help pressure test those decisions, right? Okay. I know that was a lot. I tried to give at least two for each group, right? At least two for each group. But I really want to say thank you and appreciate you to California Reading Coalition for bringing me on, and for Leslie and to Maria for introducing me. And I hope that if we do those things, and that's just about two per group, that we can actually move the needle on reading results for California's children.
Thank you, Kareem. Amazing as always.